Okay. Ah. Oh. So calm. Okay. Let's see. We had I think it was a really good session on Monday, which was the yearly anniversary of O-Sensei's passing on April 26th. And we're joined by Linda Holiday Sensei, and that was really fun just to kind of interact and kind of share old memories. One of the things that I just kind of wanted to start out with today is it was so much spotlighted last time by the choice of what I chose to read, okay? But the sense of what's called Nen, N-E-N, as it's Romanized, okay? Unify mind and body and start from there with that as your base. That kind of single-minded concentration will allow you to develop unlimited techniques that must be based on universal principles. You must always maintain a proper mindset. In training, you cannot get caught up in trivial or selfish thoughts. That creates wantonness. Keep your Nen free flowing. This is the Nen we must polish, the Nen we must activate in body. The universe is in continual growth, a growth that never stops. That is the spirit we must maintain and know as our source of being. If you do not realize these truths, you cannot practice Aikido. Aikido is based on the universal principles of nature, and if you go against them, you will end up destroying yourself. Nen does not get caught up in the forms before your eyes. It links itself to the energy of the cosmos. Keep your senses sharp and in tune with the three worlds. And he's talking there around the manifest world, the hidden world, and the divine, okay? Keep your senses sharp and in tune with, okay? And right there, there's quite a bit there. Nen is oftentimes translated as sense feeling, okay? And he says, keep it free flowing. And there's a tendency, to kind of personalize everything. It can turn into greed or self-aggrandizement, whatever that big word is. And that, when we do that, that and the fact that, we see things, on a personal basis. And what he calls Nen, he said, must be free flowing. And he talks about harmonizing mind body as kind of a start. And then he kind of says something Nen. I think in a sense, the mind and the body in balance represent a balance that's needed to get to Nen. And then from Nen, he said, cultivate that Nen, but it's free flowing, okay? And see if I can go back to here for a second. There's another. And this is a related passage. It is essential that these Wada, which is as Nen is polished, infinite Wada can be created. It is essential that these Wada be in harmony with the truth of the universe. And for this reason, one's feeling or Nen must be correct. To link the Nen to one's contracted individual ego would be a divergence from the right training. It would be a perversion of the way. Such a perversion is opposed to the truth of the universe and brings adversity and destruction to one who practices it. Nen must not be bound up in one's immediate situation, whether that situation will result in victory or defeat. Rather, it finds its roots and grows from the proper connection of one's own key to the key of the universe. At this level, Nen gives rise to more than what he calls natural powers. And, one of the things we talked about, I think on Monday, was the expression ki no myoyo, the exalted, even the magical use of ki. And so there's a lot of things that he kind of puts out there, and our job is to kind of make connections, okay? In fact, Aikido is based on that. There's uke nage and uke nage. Or there can be a connection, uke to nage, nage to uke. Okay, so that sort of thing is very important. Now, exactly what he means by Nen, that's probably a pretty strong discourse. When I asked Mary Heine Sensei about, he says, cleanse the sixth senses, the five obvious, okay? But the sixth sense was translated by John Stevens as mind. And Mary Heine Sensei said, oh, it probably meant Nen. And, it's translated here as sense feeling, okay? Now, for example, we just did something with the hands. The right and the left are engaged in some sort of a struggle, all right? Now, if we look at it, we can be either right or left with a sense of winning, okay? And we get caught up in that because our senses are kind of contaminated, and oftentimes we're in a level of ourselves where I'm going to win, I have to win. And right here, different level of perception where there's a possibility that the right and the left are connected and related. Now here, everything is very confused, tight, and kind of very willful. But if I kind of go here, and again, another thing he says is to keep your Nen free flowing, just like water going through its changes in the stream. So if you want to play around with it, just okay. Now these are two forces, but they're kind of very adversarial, and it kind of starts with me kind of either being here, or conversely, I'm kind of twisted and divided with myself, and my mind and my body are kind of there's just at odds with each other. My mind says to do this, my body. Now there is a feel to this. Right here, the upper hand seems to have the upper hand, but then again, everything is cyclical, right? And when these movements, the hands moving, one moves, but it stays in connection with the other. Like one moving may shape the other's movement, but then the other's movement kind of shapes its partner's movement. So we start to have a mutuality, not, by the way, a forced cooperation, but a free. Okay. And so what he's calling about nin, well, my sense feel the moment is there's a harmony. They can decide to go the same direction, reverse, go the other direction, or conversely, they can go this way, meet at the back, go around, meet at the top, reverse, go around, meet at the bottom. One is in connection with the other. And after a while, which one is the leading? Okay, well, Sensei would say something like, and he asked it, is water activates fire, fire activates water. They're in communion. And no matter where one is, it's there in relation to the other in a connected way. That kind of produces a harmony. And we can make one mind the other body, and they can be at odds. Or conversely, mind invigorates body, body invigorates mind, vice versa. But what we're experiencing, hopefully, okay, I'm out there feeling the harmony, but really, somebody called nin allows me to feel, experience that harmony between this and that. Okay? And that's free flowing. And if I start to get too much into, okay, I want my left side to win, I diverge from that, don't I? It expands out. Both expand out. They kind of meet back there, come together, and then they go back out, and, or they reverse. So you can start to do practices like this, and you're starting to cultivate what we might call nin. So I don't think nin is either, I mean, as much as, it was like I said, well, what, Mary, what is the translation in Japanese of what John Stevens calls mind? So that was probably nin. That was her. See, here I am just moving my hand, but my hand is a part of an unfolding. And just because I can't do that anymore, the unfolding continues. And the direction of the unfolding may change, like it's coming back, it's still unfolding. And it's now shifted planes here. Now, how do I know that? Well, we can copy the forms of the movements and get some of that feel, but feeling right there is stillness, not set, locked, but still. So these are just seated exercises we can do to maybe explore what Osensei called nin. It appears like everything is still, but it's not set. Like if this is part of an unfolding pattern, it's still unfolding. There's no apparent motion, except the unfolding is movement. And conversely, we're going this way, and this can be very confusing, but it can be a kind of an organization which is very calm with itself when we're going this way. If I notice my own system, my breathing is very calm and deep. In fact, that's what I say. It's breathing. I'm obviously inhaling, exhaling, but it's more what I call something towards breath, as opposed to breathing deeper, finer breathing, breath. Where do I get that term? Well, that's what the sense feeling is. It's okay, breathing, good, better breathing, good, breath. So sometimes the actual experience names itself. Breath as opposed to breathing, better breathing, deeper breathing, calmer breathing, breath. So those are things, I really, I guess what it is, I had the conversation with Linda Holiday Sensei, and we shared a lot of work together. And then when I remember when I was in Japan in 1977, which we talked a little bit about, where there was a lot of turmoil going on during the, within the dojo. And that is part of it. I mean, so we're supposed to get along. We're supposed to move according to universal principles. And the question is not whether Hikizuchi Sensei was right or my own judgment of the situation was correct. Judgment is never correct. Judgment is a judgment. On the other hand, you can be aligned with what's going on versus not aligned, okay? And one of the things I began to realize was so much of Sensei's work was around, well, what we're talking about Nen. In other words, there's something going on here. And the obvious is I'm in a room and we're doing a Zoom broadcast. But there's a stillness going on. Things moving in the room. I heard that little click, which I don't even know what it was, but when I'm noisy, I don't hear that stuff. I'm feeling the rug, the carpet underneath my feet. And I observe it. But on the other hand, it's almost like when you're in a sense feel state. The carpet is kind of there in a certain way. It has a life, it's feeling itself. Like the word that comes up, it talks about itself, it's fluffy. So various sense impressions, feelings, start to put us in a different zone. Now, when we're in this zone, mind and body kind of unify. Okay, so, I'm going to stand up and I'm just going to. One way of kind of looking at it is, I know I'm sitting in a chair, but I'm feeling the chair. And when you're in this more sense feeling mode, the chair is a part of that. It has a liveness and an input. It's saying, I support your standing, or I support your sitting. Now, the result is my mind and my body are unified in that act of standing or sitting or both. So the thing becomes a little circular, where we're using movement to kind of calibrate a balance between mind and body. Okay, that's common here. But when mind and body unify, it goes into a state of Nen. Now that quiet, I'm noticing, is in here and has the shape of a column. It's a column of quiet, which is a contradiction because, quiet is not a material term. I'm wearing this here, but the belly starts to have a round feel to it. Again, of course the belly is the belly, but sometimes what happens is your body or things around you start to talk in what we call sense images, sense feel images. And sometimes we're here and we're in a state of personal trauma, we're bouncing off the walls, but it's kind of like the walls are part of the conversation, you and the room. So, I thought maybe bringing that word up, and personally, I'm kind of in a very, very quiet, much more conscious state. Okay, so, those are things, you see, if you're in Nin, the mind and the body unify. Oftentimes we're out there to get to Nin. Body and mind going into some sense of balance. Okay. Now, for example, right there, since that there's an updraft, conversely, there's a downdraft. There are two flows that support that motion. I know it, let me practice it. Already I'm in this, and I'm in that place where the senses are kind of contaminated. And I'll do this to be better at this or that. It starts to get selfish. So kind of being more in this state, it's a state of balance, but the Nen is one step further than that. So when you sort of have again, thinking of the hand as it just continues to unfold and unfold way past where the hand ends. The movement back is the same thing, continue to unfold in this direction. It may also move into another direction or another direction. Boom. Okay. Now what I thought we'd do, just get this out of the way here. So it starts, okay, now this is very mental, so I'm going to start basically be feeling the body. So I'm feeling my feet, I'm feeling my breathing. I'm aware right now there's a lot of activity up here, which is really 24/7. As I start to feel my breathing, not breath yet. It's almost like something's too loud, I can turn it down. Just that feeling right here. As I get a little bit more present, this noise, I can go, okay. I'm not going to turn it off because I shut it off. Another type of dialogue comes up inside that does this. So I'm just going to turn it down. Focus on the body, feeling, the breathing. Now I can do this forever, and sometimes maybe that's something we need to do, but at some point, enough is enough. So say there's enough balance to go into what we call just the sense feeling. For example, I put my hands here. The right and the left are in a type of balance. Well, how do I know that? Well, I'm up here in the noise. But after a while, I say, okay, yeah, there's a balance here. Right, left, left, right. All basic, you kind of hang out here a little bit. There's a feeling of a current or a field. And I said, well, what is that? I'm just making it up. Yeah, that's that dialogue here. You know, since I said, senses are contaminated. I'm looking for something, I'm trying to figure it out. Largely it's because of this busyness up here. So I'm just going to get into the body a bit. And this, oh yeah, there is this field or current, right to left, left to right. And all of a sudden I realized, you know, as much as there's this field or current here, I'm also standing in a field current. This again a sense feeling. You kind of trippy with it. This used to be very popular. Things like purple and orange start to get colors sometimes. And here I am, you know, I'm in the body, but it's past the body and even the mind quieting a bit into what I call the sense feeling zone. Yeah, whatever reason, I'm in kind of an underground tunnel. And if I freak a little bit, it's because it's a little dark here. It's okay, just be easy with it. These are all sense feelings. Sudden light starts to emerge from here, you know, it's a bit like, you know, if you're in a choo-choo train, you know, there's going to be light coming out. So it's not just an empty tunnel. And that kind of has a right, left. And you say, well, I don't know what the world's happening because it's a train. What's this train coming up for? But it's a sense feeling. I'm learning how to develop this capacity of Nen. And to some degree, I don't think you develop Nen, you just become a little more comfortable with this dimension. And again, I still have my right-left balance, but it's almost like, you know, if you're in the sense feeling of it, and, you know, the tracks may go this way, but you're still in the tunnel. Okay, so those are just what I call, you know, just games you can play. It starts out that way. Okay. Anyway, since we're here, just for a second, and this stuff is hard to talk about. So one of the things that you are developing is your own voice. So, I mean, what I'm saying could be going, you know, he's from the planet, yeah, which probably is the case, right? But anybody, see right here, there's almost no wrong answers. It could be like, you know, I don't get any of this. Cool. It's just that's a, you know, that's your voice, okay? But anybody with an observation, question? So we're talking about the sense feeling zone, the Nen. Anybody?
Sensei, this is Bonnie.
Yeah.
I don't really have good words to describe it, but what you've been talking about does make sense. I'm receiving a sense feeling of it making sense to me, which itself is hard to describe.
Well, sometimes it comes across as intuition. You see what I mean? A sense feel. It's more than just a thought or an obsession. So I intuit that. I sense feel that. Yeah. So, okay. That's good. Anybody else or anything more?
Sensei, one more thing. I'm not sure if it's related, but I've had some experiences like with yesterday where I have that sense feel, that intuition or connection, and things in nature will happen. Like yesterday at a very specific time where I was transmitting communications to somebody, there was an earthquake related, and that's happened to me more than once.
No, the whole universe talks. And yeah, I know, for example, I think Ella, she has an ability to pick up earthquakes before they happen. And we tend to think, that's kind of crazy, but the major thing is, ideally, we're talking about this room. It's almost like if you kind of play the game that the walls talk to you. All right, don't bounce off of us. We're your friends. We support you. Or conversely, if I'm kind of in a tight eye, I feel hemmed in by the walls. And the carpet, for example, I gotta vacuum the carpet because it's getting a little grungy, but it says it's fluffy. All right. So these are games you can play to develop the sense feeling dimension. Anyway, thank you for sharing. Do you have any more?
No more, Sensei. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in? It's, as I said, see, if you don't, sometimes you got to say, all right, I got nothing to say. I remember one of the reasons that I actually moved to San Jose, because I actually had a couple of other offers, why don't you come here? Or it would have made a lot of sense for me to go back to Santa Cruz. All right. But, it seemed the only person that actually was working on this, that was a value judgment on my part, was Nadeau Sensei. A lot of his work in the 70s especially was around energy dimensions and sense feeling. Okay, so, and I remember I came back here and boy, did I feel dumb. Because I go to the meditations and nothing. And that part of it just, I don't know. A lot of times, your senses can be kind of too full of activity. And with the Nen, it really is you're kind of dropping into a deeper zone. Okay. In fact, I can know a lot, and sometimes that can get in my way. One thing that when we were in Shingu was, you were encouraged to be sharp. Pick up the language, pick up what this meant, da, 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 da. Every day was a kind of a test, it's like, how sharp are you? So you were kind of, and this stuff is almost the opposite of that. It's like, okay, enough of that.
Sensei, this is Audrey.
Yes, Audrey.
I had my flu shot this morning, my first one, and I'm feeling kind of miserable. But what I noticed is,
okay, yeah.
when we were doing the energy work, that it went away.
Oh, okay. It's interesting.
And now that I'm lying down, I'm just feeling like I have body aches and things like that. But I have some pain-related illnesses, and I have experienced where I'm teaching, a lot of that just goes away. And I know it's partly because I'm focused on other people and not myself, but I've always thought it was the flow of ki. Would you say that the Nen is something different, like the flow of ki, or could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, if we're kind of in our, our senses contaminated state, we're run by this interior dialogue. And ki is just something that we know about. But when you start to kind of shift a bit, and it is a shift, and Aikido potentially can be a vehicle for you to shift to where ki is ki. And you're not the only one that experiences that. I talked to Robert Fraser Sensei, and what he told me was interesting because, he's 80 something now and he's physically challenged. He says, when I do Aikido, everything is so easy. Okay. Frank Duran Sensei, he's also in his 80s. So, we're talking at a CAA meeting. It was San Jose. He comes to my school. We're in the office, somebody's teaching. So, we're just sort of catching up, which is always fun. And he just said, sometimes he experiences what he called, just this imbalance walking. Okay. But he says he gets on the mat, that disappears. He's just, he was making a joke that, he should put his bed on the mat in the dojo and he'd just get up and he'd be fine. But what happens, you leave the mat and all of a sudden your system goes back to its more norm. And we go, all right.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. But this last weekend, with all the classes and and the Sunday and then your classes,
Yeah,
and a little bit on remembering Sensei when there's more of a series, and even if I'm not participating fully, the energy just seems to buoy me up. And I wonder, there's a communal connection with that. And of course, my selfishness is I want to figure out how to perpetuate that so I have less pain and ability to walk and things, but I don't seem to be in charge. It just comes or it goes.
well, I think, that's kind of, where actually, the person that I think has a pretty good way of laying that out is Nado Sensei. There are levels of being, right? Self, whatever. And, we hang out here a lot. But like, for example, today, we're using some sort of balance, mind, body, in breath, out breath, left, right. I'm always up here and out there, but if I can go more back and under. So balance. But then you can keep balance and, well, okay, the gateway to that space is more balance. And you can get more balance, but you're still kind of stuck. This one starts to kind of get selfish, right? But what happens is that you get some balance. And this level is there. And so I don't know. I know that O Sensei, the whole thing is they would say, right before he passed on, he was very ill. But I think I read somewhere where he was, ill, and then people would kind of support him as he walked, which would actually piss him off. And I think one of the people was Saotome Sensei, and the other one was Kudo Iwa Sensei. They were pretty up there in terms of rank. And he got so upset, he just key-eyed and threw them both. He was like, and Saotome Sensei was amazed. He says, oh my gosh. He just threw, basically, people that would be considered master level, right? When he was very ill. And Mary Honey Sensei talks about this Glasgow, I think I mentioned, where she's living in the dojo for a weekend with a women's group. And O Sensei comes in, and he's very ill at that point. He's being held up by a couple of people. And so he sees them there, and all of a sudden he gets on the mat. And he's kind of in his O Sensei mode. And he starts flipping this guy around who's like, one of the resident crushers, this big gorilla type guy, all right? Like he's a rag doll. And he's telling the women, just, I'm really happy you're here. I really want you to continue to train. So it was a gift from him to, the people that were gathered there. It's a women's gathering, okay? And then after that, he walks off the mat and He's that. So, I mean, that's one of the great mysteries, right? How could we hang out with the mystery? What I told Ano Sensei once was because we were all a lot younger in the early to mid 70s, right? And so I said, when I was back then, I used to think, oh, it'll be okay to get older because we'll be more like O Sensei. And he looked at me and he kind of cracked up, it'd be okay to get older. We'll just be like O Sensei. And that may yet happen, but that would be real training. So what happens is, I think the degree to which our senses are clogged, we create levels of our own, of mind and body. And the dialogue here, Don Juan talks about this. He says the interior dialogue. And then there's what you call the tonal, your more personal self, as opposed to the Nakwal, or the words like infinity or the eagle. There's a lot of words he had for that. But he said, if you can start to, which says stop the interior dialogue, he says you can do anything. That's the basis of what he calls sorcery. And a lot of that is around the body. Right. In other words, we age, some of it, because we're supposed to. Deepak Chopra calls it biological entropy. But, his thesis and Don Juan's thesis is a lot of that can be countermanded. I mean, if you're in that tradition of being a sorcerer or sorceress, dealing with magical forces, in order to be able to command those forces, you have to be able to command yourself. And, repeatedly, one of the things that Carlos is always talking about is, Don Juan, here I am, and you're out hiking me, and you're an old man, and you're not really old, are you? And Don Juan said, no, I'm not really old. And, and Carlos was younger, and Marie Takahashi Sensei on Sunday was talking about, oh, Sensei would just walk. And everybody else have to run to catch up, and he was just walking. And everybody else is going like this, right? So he was coming from a different level. And so, the Nen, if we were more in constant communion with the universe, for example, then maybe what would happen is the mind-body stuff would also have to be in balance. I think it goes both ways. If you balance your mind and your body, then the dimension of Nen opens up. Conversely, if you hit Nen, your mind and your body have to be in balance. Basically what it really is, if you go back to Einstein's theory of relativity, basic equation, this side, okay, is physics, the phenomenal world. This side is mathematics. And he found the equal. Okay. This side of the equation, a balance can be mind, body, fire, water, heaven, earth, light, dark, not so much gender-wise, but masculine, feminine. This side is Nen. And there's an equal sign. And sometimes, people have this ability, they really have this. And therefore, when they have this, their mind and their body are together. But it's unstable. So you have to have the equation from both sides. So that's a good observation, because especially as the Aikido community, or at least a substantial part of it, ages, you see, it's really important for us to develop this to be more like O Sensei was, okay? And yeah, okay. Anything else, Audrey?
Yes, I just wanted to say that, yes, I think that's a large part of what I get out of your classes is moving to those states. And I wanted to say that I become nonverbal as I go to those deeper states. So in your knowledge, is there a way to keep that verbal and still stay in those balanced states?
Well, at some point, okay, this is, all right. I'm gonna go into sense field. My first impression, clarity. Things here are clear. There could be a couple other ones, but one that jumps out at me is clarity. Now, okay, now I'm looking to try to figure it out. There's too much noise going on. The dominant voice here is clarity, okay? Mind and body. Now there are other couple of voices. I could have highlighted one of those. But the word, a lot of what Sensei talks about, I think by Kototama, is kind of seen as, this series of mystical sounds, which, obviously it's its own study. It's almost its own math. But almost all of that stuff has to come through the proper sense, feeling, sense. And so when you can kind of go, okay, let's go another one. Something's going on here. So this, it's almost like when you're in that sense feeling zone, you let it name itself. And right here, it says, I'm luminescent. That was different than light shining out, but there's kind of a glow happening, and it's happening from it's happening out there, but it also, the wellspring of it is through you or me right here. So that is the only thing I can say is if you're looking for it, trying to understand it, you can just be in it. Oh, well, this is magical space here. Okay, I can't talk about it, and it's inconsistent. So balance. See, I've got, I can't do it. I mean, if I was playing a game, pretending to be totally out of it, I can kind of do it, but it's bad training, right? Because everybody then says, okay, we got to be like this to do that, and it's better to. There's a feeling of energy fields folding in, expanding at the back, coming back around, folding in. What is that? So you kind of quiet down and say, okay, can you name yourself? And the word I get, it's a big word. So, it just says infinity. The other way of describing it would be, but I'm kind of getting it as like a toroidal structure. Nonstop. Folds, comes back, expands, goes out, folds, comes back. If I play here, all of a sudden I realize there's another one equal, not opposite, but complementary that goes this way. And there's a space here. Well, space between this and that. That's the space. This is, I'm the still point. Okay. Boom and all. See, if I'm here and too much in the idea, I want to stand up. I don't. Boom, boom, boom. So that ability to sense shapes, but it's almost like, one of the things when you have difficulty describing it, let it talk through you. That's its own practice too. It's almost, when I'm saying, what's your voice? There's you having your own voice with your own experience. And at some point, as you clear, the experience talks about itself through you. I mean, I was going to say, the kami speak through me. The kami support my motion. And I wish I were as good as him, but I'm talking to the universe. The universe talks back. We have this communication. Oh, and boom, going off of that, boom, there's motion, or there's an alive stillness. Now, if you write it down, people can memorize it, and they kind of I'm learning to do that. That's good. But it's almost like anytime it's a tricky one, because how come when I get there, it's always there. That dimension or subdimensions of it are always here, right here in what you call ordinary reality. But I lack the balance to connect to them when I'm okay. Does that answer your question a little bit more? It's its own practice.
Yes, that was very powerful. I realized while you were talking that I'd had a different energy feeling on Sunday, and it was that I can make myself go to that toroidal space by imaging it.
Yeah.
But on Sunday, it just happened without me imaging it. Partly,
Yeah.
I'm sure, because of the spiritual process, but and it happened twice, and I thought, wow, how did I get here? And it was like the minute you think, how did I get here, it goes away. And so I just, as you were talking just now, was doing the feel sense, and yes, it comes back. But the minute I talk about it, it kind of goes away. So it may be a choice to be nonverbal.
Well, I would say it's not being nonverbal. It's more like, what happened? Well, you've done enough work that a gateway is opening for you. Okay. And initially what happens is that, why did it open? Because you're getting enough balance that the gateway to another level is unfolding. And so instead of, if you're talking about it, that's part of the interior dialogue. You get pulled back up and out. So at some point say, okay, is there anything you have to say to me? Now the gateway will talk to you. And, just sometimes you don't get a word, you get a feeling like I'm getting kind of a luminescent glow from the inside. Some sort of balance is coming up in here at a sense level or feel level. And all of a sudden, we're starting to pick up the toroidal motion. You're shifting from a knowledge of it, and the experience is starting to show. I know it. I can work it. Now I need to get out of the way and allow it to come through more of a transparency in me. And then it can talk. You ask it, well, is there any advice? It's like, yeah. You get words like hush. Now, those sensei loves the word easy. You're easy with it. Because I get too busy with it, I interfere with it. The gateway, I'm closing the gateway because I'm getting back up into this. That's what's tricky, because knowledge, all right, is something you trust what is there in the moment. And there are major things, you may write them down just as notes, but you don't go, okay, I got it now. It's like, yeah, that's to remind me. That's to remind me. Little thing, okay. I write down notes to the margins of, some of the sensei stuff. And that's just to remind me something. A little thing, oh, okay, yeah. Right? Stephen Curry was asked, what are you thinking about when you're making 40-foot shots? Look like you're just, you're throwing something into the Pacific Ocean. And he said, if you start thinking about how to do it, you mess up. Just a rhythm, flow in the moment. You may check certain things, like, your feet have to be balanced. And he said, enough. And so I suspect, like that. I mean, he's somebody who, when he comes from another dimension. And, that shot is something that he works on a lot. That's alignment, it's balance. You don't just have that. But on the other hand, in the moment during a game with all these flows and subflows, it's all of a sudden, boom, time to rise up, boom. Time to rise up, boom. And I've noticed, he went through this almost superhuman level, for being a basketball player, scoring 40 points a game for a stretch. That's, and I just noticed that, even though he's doing well, is that I noticed that his decision making is not as clear. So we go through, another level is showing, okay, where the old level go? Well, there's another one. So anyway, anybody else with a question or observation on? Because a lot of Osensei stuff, if you read it, it's almost all stuff he got through sense feeling. So, that's why, in a lot of ways, I think a lot of people that I'm close to, just can't handle Nado Sensei, okay? But, when I got back, I was thinking, he's about the only one, at that time. I mean, since then it may have changed, but to really deal with this dimension, right? Energy. Okay, I know about energy. I'm having more energy in the technique. Oh yeah, I'm learning about spirals, but just all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay. All right. And so, I kind of spent, I mean, we still interact, we still work together. So, but, that whole thing is almost like, balance, a level of sense feeling. But if you are in the sense feeling dimension, you also are in balance. Sometimes what happens, you jump levels and you're in this thing and your normal level is here, but you're balanced at this level and you go, where'd it go? And so, it's to kind of go dot, 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 dot. I mean, the Nado Sensei kind of likes the linear. To be honest with you, see, if you hit this, you've got that. So I kind of like, and you can go from here to here, and then you got that. And so I drive them nuts sometimes because I like the quote unquote non-linear. Right about here, if I need to move, I'm going to shift into that zone. If I were to, if my life and death depended on one player sinking an impossible shot, it would be Stephen Curry, because he understands that. Does he speak? Is his language like this? No, but his movement is like this. Okay. Anybody else? I don't know. It's just let's see, about a couple of minutes. So sometimes what you can do, just we did a lot of stuff today, just sort of sitting, but just essentially weekend, lots of energy coming up. Ooh, lots of energy, which can either motivate you or whatever, or it can go crash. And right about there, what's really showing is the under. Wada Sensei called the Nenokuni, the land of the roots, translated sometimes as the underworld. And sometimes it shows us, and Wada Sensei likes the term of downtime. And you can either fight it, it's like, oh, I want to get out there and I want to, but easy. And one of the things that happens a little bit with the downtime is sometimes you soak. And that's different than this activity. I kind of like it's almost like you're in a nice warm bath and all of a sudden you say, oh my gosh, my internal dialogue shut up. And then instead of thinking about it, you just sort of go into the experience of the warm bath, the nourishment from the roots. There's this push to go up because you're getting energy here. But it's almost like, if you need gas, you fill up a quarter tank. Why don't you fill the whole tank up if you got the money for it? So sometimes you sort of soak. If you ask the deep land of the roots, what do I need to do? Sometimes you don't get the answer in words, but for example, I kind of get this, it's not light, but it's luminescence. Kind of when your own sort of glow is starting to fade. Oh my gosh. Land of the roots. It tends that you could just sort of fill up a quarter tank, run out there and drive around, but then you got to fill up again pretty quick. So maybe you fill the tank. I kind of like this place because my interior dialogue to a great degree kind of shuts up. So, those are just what we call the sense feeling world. That's one of the things about Aikido is it's pretty close because that was O-sensei's design. And his words are kind of tricky because it is these things talking through, O-sensei, but they're also talking through Ueshiba Morihei. And when he's really talking about kami, he's talking about these energies, and they Japanese, so they name themselves. I mean, you're in a basketball team, okay? He's kind of a star, but his teammates were Materasu Omikami, Susano no Omikami, Izanagi Omikami-sama, Izanami Omikami-sama. Those are kind of, and he had a personal relationship with them because he hung out here. And then, so he's just in a very, very deep, original place of being, which you have to be. So he's hanging out with kami. So in that level, if we get there, we are also touching ourselves as kami. Okay? So, that part of it is, what happens is the actual human dimension of Aikido is kind of down here. And that's good. For example, just doing the weekend, the Santa Cruz O-sensei commemorative memorial was fun because you saw people and everything like that. But this is deeper. And when you really heard Marie Takahashi sensei and Robert Fraser sensei talking, they were connecting to their sense of O-sensei from that deeper personal level, which they were kind of tending towards the archetypal, the real deep flows. And we're privileged to listen to them. And so some of that came through, their own recounting of what it was like to be around O-sensei. So, it's good to do that, but, what attracted me to the event was not the human dimension. It was a chance to kind of somewhat experience, feel what they had to say about O-sensei. So it was a part of O-sensei living in their system, and to just sort of try to tune into that. If you go like a game, and what would be my experience of listening to those people. And you let the experience talk about itself. The word that comes up right there, renewal, 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 renewal. So that's a practice. If sometimes you have I can't say anything, just one is about I feel more balanced. I feel more flow. That's a step there, because you're developing your own voice. If you go, But then, the other thing is let the actual experience or the actual sense feel in the moment speak. And that's where things are very interesting. Okay, I think anybody else, anything to share before we close down for today?
Hey, Sensei, this is Cliff.
Yeah, hi.
This is kind of tangential to, I think,
Sure.
the main subject of the class, but what you were saying, something you're saying really struck a chord with me, which was when you had the two hands and you said you didn't care who, whether the left hand or the right hand won.
Yeah.
And I saw the left hand and the right hand as uke and nage, or nage and uke.
Okay.
And it felt like, it was like a light bulb went off. It's like, oh yeah, so like uke and nage are like the left hand and the right hand, and are coordinated motion as if they were coordinated. I mean, they're separate people, but as if they were coordinated by one unifying thing, right? Which in the left hand and right hand case is my brain. But in the uke and nage case is the field of ki and everything that connects, the two people and their brains.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you're able to kind of speak about it, which means you got your own voice around the experience, right? Yeah, that's very good. I mean, when we're doing all this stuff with the staff, it's left and right, right and left, Izanagi, Izanami, and they are just, boom, 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 moving, 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 boom, boom. Okay, yeah. That's what it's about. I mean, your own mind and your body are uke to nage, nage to uke. No sense they like fire to water, water to fire, heaven to earth, earth to heaven, and there are other things you like. But when you sort of get to the balance, that other thing, your perception of that is an experience. So that's the beginnings of the nin. If you sort of like right here, for example, this is a little funny thing about how the hands are going and the chin and the neck are going, all right? And the eyes are coordinating the movement. And it's going to get kind of dull, but now you can renew here. This kind of has its own miraculous quality, like, okay. And the word that comes up is synchronization. Things sync up, things sync up, things sync up. Tai Chi, for example, you're in a state where the movements of the body, the various joints, your vision, eyes, your breathing, a state of synchronization or unity. So, that's kind of why the Tai Chi can be very, very relaxing, but also requires a certain amount of focus. So yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, that was good to hear. Okay. Anyway, we're I just thought, there's so much activity over the weekend. It might be nice to just sort of do a class more around. See, there's a lot of activity. I mean, O-sensei, said, during World War II, he knew the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was going to happen because the energies told him. I mean, being able to tell when there's going to be an earthquake. I mean, if we're, the thing that I would say is that when you're doing that, just make sure that you also appreciate that there's a balance going on that allows you into that zone. Because sometimes what happens, it can be destabilizing. You get somebody, who, is in a massively deep place, but then they're like this, and so certain people are really difficult to listen to because, and for that moment, they're in an equal balance to that, right? But their normal state is. And so, it doesn't hurt to just sort of sit with your breathing, sit feeling your right and your left, sit feeling your feet, sit feeling your jaw and neck relaxed. Those are just anything that gets you into balance. Like I tend to, it's very natural for me to go into the sense feeling. I mean, it's very natural. In fact, I go there, but I also am getting an increasing sense that the balance that you're in is also important. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna call it for today. So I thank you all for tuning in. Okay.
Thank you, Sensei.
Take care. Okay.
It was good hearing you guys. I'll see you guys later.
Good to see you, Bonnie.
Likewise.
Hold on a sec. Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.